Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Hope you're off to a great start. Hope your weekend was great. Hope you stayed cool out there and enjoyed everything that there was to be enjoyed. I was at practice on Saturday and Sunday. We got a lot of different takeaways to bring back for you. And, of course, the news of the day, Adam Schefter first with it last night, though he was not the insider on site yesterday. Ian Rappaport was doing NFL Network training camp broadcast live from St. Thomas Sports Park, and Schefter got it, 6:30, 6:25 about p.m. last night, that Quandre Diggs is coming in here to supplement your safety depth, if not be an outright starter. A one-year reported deal up to $5 million, cost-effective, not Justin Simmons, same age, very effective player, very adept at turning the ball over. He had 18 interceptions while he was a Seattle Seahawk. Of course, that's not where his career started, but still, that is where he is most recently of, and it does reunite him with Jamal Adams if Jamal Adams was available to play football right now, which at least in the last 2 days, Lucas and Jackson, he has not been. 615-737-1045 is the number. If you want to jump in, you can do so there. You can also interact with us, hang out in studio on the FNM Bank chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. If you would like to get involved there as well, where DJ from Nashville says on YouTube, Buck, needed a dog update ASAP. That's how my morning started. I found a dog. Jackson wanted me to bring it into the studio.
I wanted a buddy back here, and you robbed me.
What's his name?
Jeffrey.
Doesn't. No, it doesn't have a name because this is what I get for going on a run. I don't ever run. I hate running. Running sucks. Running is the absolute worst. But this morning, I decided, it's not 90 degrees at 6 a.m. I'm up at 4:30. I'll go for a run today. And what do I run by but Crossroad Pets up there on the corner of Monroe and Rosa Parks in my neighborhood. Crossroads Pets, which is a great spot, no free ads, but also they have a pet shelter there. They have pets available for adoption. They have cats. They have dogs. They do grooming. It's a great spot. I've been going to them for years. And as I jog by Crossroad Pets, I notice a dog crate sitting outside of Crossroads. It is a small dog. He looks very, very frightened. It's too early in the morning for the dog to just be sitting out there. There's a homeless person who's sitting on the corner of Crossroads at Arthur and Rosa Parks. I asked the gentleman whether he has seen anybody drop the dog. He says no, and then he decides, well, if the dog doesn't bite, maybe I'll take the dog. And I said, no, maybe I'll see if I can't do something here and
so also depriving the houseless community of companionship, I see.
The unhoused.
You were just on a mission to ruin many people's day today, I can see.
Well, this dog has ruined mine because now it's in my backyard and the cats are pissed.
What is the dog's, is it male or female, do you know?
It's a male,
okay.
Yeah, and it's not been fixed yet, and this dog has already cost me more money than I'm willing to spend on a dog, and I am sure that will not be the end of it before today is done, because I did have to pick a name because I'm going to take it to my vet and make sure that, everything's copacetic. I got it some flea and tick medication, gave it the flea and tick medication this morning. We even went on a walk while we were on our morning call this morning, walking the dog around the block.
So, dog looks healthy.
It looks, I'm glad that I found it before it got hot because the thing was sitting in a cage. I don't know how long it had been sitting out there.
Good.
So, yeah. That's how my morning started.
We will watch you become a dog person before our eyes.
I can think of a million different things that would happen in my life before I would become a dog person, though this dog is incredibly sweet. And the name that I put, because I had to put a name down to book a vet appointment, is Happy. He's a very happy dog.
Oh, that's nice. Could have named it Quandre. You find a dog the morning after the Titans sign veteran defensive back Quandre Diggs, who also is very healthy. Like the dog. Quandre Diggs hasn't missed a game since 2020. He's only missed one game.
I'm going to make this dog your problem.
In the last 4 years. I got to move right now, buddy. I got enough problems.
You want to talk about getting evicted in the middle of training camp?
I didn't get evicted.
You're right, Blue did.
Nobody got evicted.
but you're having a forced move in the middle of training camp. You sure you don't want to open the show with our personal issues instead of the actual news for the audience out there? They're like, shut up, you idiots.
Nobody cares about why I'm having to move. I will tell you the reason is not cockroaches like it was for Will Bowling earlier this summer, which I did not envy him for.
People are now suggesting names for the dog. Ricky says Monroe, which is a very nice name. If it was a girl, Monroe seems like a girl name, doesn't it? Maybe you could name it. Anyway, the dog is a temporary situation, and we are working to resolve it. So, none of these shelters open, by the way, until 10 a.m. So if you are within the sound of my voice in the Middle Tennessee area, and you are an adoption or pet shelter type of place that takes in abandoned animals, please contact me at Buck Rising on Twitter or on Instagram, because at 1 p.m. I will be looking for a solution for this very sweet dog. Anyway, Quandre Diggs a Titan. It happens yesterday after practice. And I don't know if the Tyler Boyd 70-yard touchdown run or touchdown reception that ran past a bunch of slow Titans defensive backs and really didn't look like he was moving that fast, but fast enough to run away from the Titans secondary the other day, put it in Rand Carthon's head that it's probably time to need a safety. Isn't that what he said with Ramon, Kayla, and Will when he visited with them the first day of training camp? Basically the same thing as he's told us on the first day of training camp press conferences, which is we continue to look. We'll sign a safety when we need to sign a safety. And turns out game week, by the way, happy game week to all of you out there, Nissan Stadium, Saturday night, Niners and Titans. We will have a preseason game, the first of 3, that inches us closer and closer to the regular season. So Rand Carthon decided Sunday of game week, time to get a new safety. Probably going to be a starter alongside Amani Hooker.
It's crazy that Quandre Diggs is 3 years older than his former Seattle teammate Jamal Adams, now Titans teammate, yet is not the one who has all the question marks about health. I know we'll talk about Jamal Adams, who was not out there this past weekend, but Quandre Diggs has been a model of availability over the last few years, even as he has gotten into his 30s. He has gotten healthier and more available as he has reached his 30s, which is interesting, as Jamal Adams obviously kind of fell off that health cliff, so to speak, a couple of years ago.
So, yes, we will talk about what this means for Jamal Adams and the rest of the Titans secondary right now, because L'Jarius Sneed did speak yesterday despite not participating in practice as a part of his management program. So we have now 4 padded practices, 4 fully padded practices in the books. We will not be out there until Wednesday or Thursday. By the way, we only have 4 training camp broadcasts left. And what we've got planned for at least 3 of the remaining 4, I think is going to be very, very interesting to all of you out there. And we will let you know more information as it becomes more concrete for us, specifically who is going to be appearing with us on which day. But I think you'll enjoy all 3 of at least 3 of the final 4 that we have planned to date. Outside of that, it was, I think you're looking at training camp. Well, let me ask you this. How often do you catch yourself coming away with opinions after a training camp practice that you feel you need to revisit the very next day that you're out there on the practice field? Because for me, I have done this. This is now my 8th training camp. I have caught myself from doing this and tried to catch myself from doing this on a day-to-day, having too extreme of opinions just based on one day. And even, honest to God, from drill to drill. Like not trying to veer off to too many extremes based on what I saw in individual or 7-on-7, because, you know what, it may be rectified by team, and that may completely adjust my position on what I thought that I was seeing and how important that specific moment in time was. Because training camp is just, the days bleed together so often, and even the drills do. So I've tried to measure that. But do you ever catch yourself trying to or going to too far of an extreme based on an individual practice or rep or team drill?
I try not to. I mean, there are certain things that end up being true when you have training camp takeaways. Like it's felt like in each of the last 2 training camps, one of the main takeaways has been, Ryan Tannehill loves Kyle Phillips. Ryan Tannehill's going to look for Kyle Phillips.
He's doing it again, by the way, Kyle Phillips.
He's sneakily showing up. Yeah, there's just a lot more names on the depth chart in front of him than there were the last couple of years. But that turned out to be true. When Kyle Phillips was healthy, Kyle Phillips got the ball, whether it was Ryan Tannehill or Will Levis. When he was healthy, problem is he hasn't been healthy very often. So what have been training camp takeaways through a little less than 2 weeks? Okay, Calvin Ridley, really, really good.
Yep.
Going to play a big role in this offense. Not an overreaction. But if you were to just take what you see during training camp, you would say Matthew Jackson is going to be this team's best safety. The guy is out there picking off passes like crazy. What does he have, 3-4 interceptions so far in camp?
Yesterday was his third. It came on an overthrow, and I couldn't tell who was the intended target because it was just Matt Jackson in a lot of space. Malik Willis overthrew and allowed Matt Jackson to pick it off. He ran to the end zone. I don't know if it would have been a touchdown, but still, he's got 2 off Levis and 1 off Willis.
Yeah, but Matt Jackson, not a starter in this football team.
Turns out they needed injuries. More safety depth.
Yes, which they went out and got.
Yes, in Quandre Diggs. So the implications of that is what we'll hone in on next. Also, a ton of practice observations. I was fully prepared to do an entirely different show, both last night on Primetime with Robert and today for 3 hours on the radio show. And we will still get to a good deal of it because 2 days of practice and 2 days of consequential practice, I might add, based on who was available to return and also who has continued to make their presence be felt on both sides of the ball. We'll get into that. Coming up next, though, first, what it means for Jamal Adams that his former Seattle Seahawk teammate Quandre Diggs is now also roaming around in the Titans secondary. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
You ever wonder why so many pro athletes go and use stem cell therapy? Because it works. I'm Ron Slade, retired 14-year pro basketball player, and I needed to get this done. After I went through my entire career riddled with injuries, I needed therapy. So I went to Kellum Stem Cell Institute out in Franklin. Why? Because they're the stem cell specialists. They can be yours too. They're the stem cell specialists of the Tennessee Titans. You know why? Because it works.
Make an appointment today with Kellum Stem Cell Institute.
Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. That's right, game week. Brad Hopkins was just hanging out in here. He'll be a part of the pregame proceedings. I don't know what the pregame show is going to be this year. I would like an update on that at some point. Would like to get some details ironed out before we get on the air, because it has been for the longest, Lucas, outside of Gate 1 where the pro shop is. And now that space, I mean, there is a space there, but there is also a mountain of dirt. So I don't know if we're just going to be doing pregame all year, looking at the mountain of dirt instead of people, or what the logistics are. But yes, we will be out there in some form or fashion, the details of which we will update with you as soon as I know. So, Titans signed Quandre Diggs. That is the news of the day. We'll talk about the impact of Jamal, or what it means for Jamal Adams and the rest of the Titans secondary. Practice observations as well. 615-737-1045 is the number if you have questions that you would like to ask, because they did just have 2 more days of fully padded practice that we were not on air to discuss. It was on Saturday and Sunday, and of course I was out there, so anything you got, I will do my best to answer. Chris is in sales up first. Hey, Chris.
Hey, guys. How are we doing this morning?
Good.
Awesome. So, real quick, I'm really happy about the Quandre Diggs signing. Like, it really helps solidify, our secondary. That was, our biggest hole remaining. So I'm happy about that. But you've voiced this before, and I'm sure many Titans fans would agree that our biggest remaining need would probably be help at edge. And I'm sure they may be waiting to see what the league is deciding on Arden Key regarding his suspension. But I just want to ask, what would you rather see them do? Would you rather see, if they were to get help at edge, would you rather see them go after a guy like Yannick Ngakoue or Carl Lawson on a cheaper deal, or maybe trade for a guy like Matt Judon, who's rumored to be available? I'll hang up the list, and thank you for taking my call.
I have been pro Matt Judon for months. When was Harold's birthday? Harold Landry's birthday? Do you remember?
Oh, what, a month ago or something?
I feel like it's been a little longer than that. But around the time of Harold Landry's birthday, for some reason, we were doing a bit about what would you get Harold Landry for his birthday. And I said Matt Judon via trade. I think that makes a ton of sense. But I understand if the sticking point, and I don't know whether this has come up in negotiations with the Patriots or in teams that would be interested in acquiring him from the Patriots, because remember, he did not play a lot of football last year. He was lost for the season, all but I want to say 3 games or 2 games.
Judon?
Yeah. He only played in 2 or 3 games at most last season before getting shut down with some kind of biceps injury.
He's about to be 32 also. But yeah, he only played in 4 games and holding in still. He got out there in uniform late last week.
Okay.
Started camp with the hold-in.
And famously, the Patriots are currently paying other players on their defensive front. Judon yet to get a deal. Now, if I was New England, I would probably keep him. But I would love to see the Titans pursue, or at least inquire about what the cost might be. And there would probably be some conditional draft compensation involved in making a move like that. The simplest thing, though, is just grab one of these dudes who is available on the free agent market and not have any mess or fuss around it, not have to give up any draft capital. Because Carl Lawson is, 1, a player that Brian Callahan knows. They were both together in Cincinnati. 2, he has had injury, but he was making visits as recently as last week, has not yet signed with a team, but expected to make the rounds. And when he might, or if he might visit with the Titans, that remains to be seen. We'll keep you updated as new information becomes available.
And is still under 30.
As is Ngakoue, I believe. Ngakoue, I think, is 29, which again is wild.
They both
to me.
are.
Why do we keep doing this? Is it just because COVID? Is it just because COVID that I think all these players that have been in the league, like Jamal Adams and Yannick Ngakoue and all these other dudes, should be 35 because COVID felt like 5 years in and of itself?
Maybe. I am that way with Ngakoue. It feels like he's been around since 2009.
That's what I'm saying. Anyway, so the path of least resistance is what? Well, it's what they just did with Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs, which is find cost-effective solutions that are available in free agency, pending physicals. Now, what we talked about with Ngakoue, who did play the bulk of the season for the Chicago Bears last year, and Lawson, who did miss the majority of last season dealing with injury, but sounds like he's trying to make a comeback. And they already have a player who's trying to make a comeback in Shane Ray, though his NFL success we're much further removed from it than we are Carl Lawson. We were talking about Carl Lawson as being, the the potential. Was that the same year as Bud Dupree available in free agency? I want to say it was around the same time, but we definitely talked about that at some point on the radio show, Carl Lawson, once he hit free agency. It sounds like, based on what they've done at safety, and edge is more important than safety, that the finances are something that they're trying to keep, they're trying to keep their checkbook balanced, basically, here. Because Justin Simmons, my understanding is he was asking for around or north of $10 million a year. That is not what the going rate for most of the safeties has been. Again, this Quandre Diggs deal is being reported by Rap Sheet, who you'll hear from here in just a second, of the NFL Network, as being 1 year up to $5 million. So that is definitely more cost-effective for a player who is the same age. And again, if you're thinking about this and you're somebody who wanted Justin Simmons, because I know a lot of you out there still did, is Justin Simmons so much better than Quandre Diggs that it is worth damn near double? The answer to your question is probably no. And that is what organizations have to weigh here. We'll find out how impactful Quandre Diggs is able to be. Let's hear from Ian Rappaport, who was on site yesterday broadcasting from Titans training camp. This courtesy of the NFL Network.
Yeah, I was actually there, talking to some of the personnel people, some of the coaches yesterday. Seemed like the defense is pretty set. Maybe just kind of had one little hole. They filled that last night after I landed. Thank you very much. Quandre Diggs, one of the old dudes, one of the veterans who was still available, really one of the best overall players who was still a free agent, agreed to terms on a 1-year deal worth $5 million max. Basically, it is a $4 million base deal, $3 million base plus another $1 million in easily reachable playtime incentives. If you're wondering why at this point in camp the Titans need another safety after signing Jamal Adams, the reason is with Denard Wilson in a scheme, they're basically trying to replicate what Baltimore did last year. That's the scheme they are running, and they had 3 safeties who were on the field a ton. Guys who play a lot, who make a lot of plays, are sort of that nerve center of the defense. Quandre Diggs is a really cerebral kind of elder statesman. Felt like he was one of the final pieces of what should be a really, really feisty defense. Rarely do you find good, talented people at this time in training camp, but for sure yesterday the Tennessee Titans did.
Well, that is interesting by Rap Sheet, because you and I both looked at each other at the same time in the middle of that clip, and you had heard this clip previously. That was the first time that I've heard it. And you said that there are some things that you don't necessarily agree with based on what Rap Sheet is saying.
Not necessarily. And it's a very hard job to cover the entire NFL and to make declarative statements about teams after seeing them for 1 to 2 days of practice. But
it sounds great, though. I would love that.
Yeah, not a bad gig.
Swoop in, swoop out.
Rap Sheet saying, yep, they did it. They had one tiny little hole left on their defense, and they got it taken care of with Quandre Diggs. That I thought was a little bit out of sorts. I would say that edge rusher is a significant problem at this point, is bigger than a tiny little hole left on defense. Arden Key said himself when he talked with you guys over the weekend that a defense goes as far as its outside linebackers take it. And I don't know where or how confident Titans fans are at the moment with Harold Landry and then going straight down to Rashad Weaver, at least for those first 6 games that Key is reportedly suspended. But I would say there is still work to be done in addressing that part of things. And also that Denard Wilson's just bringing the Ravens defense over to Tennessee. I think
we've talked about that several times.
We've talked about it a lot. What we've seen from the Titans defense and how aggressive they've been in camp is a far cry from what the Ravens deployed last year with Mike McDonald as their DC.
What did Callahan say the other day? Denard is literally sending new blitzes at us every day. That is not what Baltimore did last year. And listen, to Rap's credit, his NFL Network setup, you weren't out there yesterday, but does it face the field or does it face the facility?
Faces the cameras, which are he's facing the facility.
The camera, which is you are facing the facility. So his back is to the practice field. And they interviewed, I know, Snead and Levis. And I'm not saying, that you should bury Ian Rappaport today. That's not what I'm saying at all. But there are some declarative statements in that reporting that are not totally accurate based on what we have seen at camp and how the current defense is running. Now, are they going to blitz all the time, every time? I don't know. They have been in practice. I can't remember the first time that I brought this up, the idea of every time it was before training camp started, because I was going back and watching Denard Wilson and Brian Callahan and Nick Holt's press conferences, and he just kept talking about aggressive. And you can have the mindset beyond just being aggressive in your blitzes, but the way that he was kind of talking about it made me think, all right, this is not the Ravens' defense of last year, nor are they built like the Ravens' defense of last year. So I do think that was a slight oversight in the clip that you just heard. Now, you bring up Arden Key. Arden Key is practicing. Arden Key is not suspended as of today.
Yeah, I expected to get a Friday news dump
The rest of us did as well. We were very much, but I did not see Danico Autry's suspension come out. I did not see Arden Key's suspension come out, or at least be made official by the league. Both have been reported on. In fact, Autry has acknowledged in a statement that he is preparing for a suspension. The appeals process, I don't know if they can appeal it before the suspension is made official. So I would not think that this would be a part of the appeals process if such things are able to be appealed based on the evidence that the league has at its disposal. But as of today at 10:30 a.m. on Monday, August the 5th, Arden Key has not been officially suspended by the league.
Are you seeing his reps, or this weekend at least, were you seeing his reps go down anymore? Because remember last year when NPF got the gambling suspension, he's running with the threes, right? It's like you can practice, you can be out there, you can play in preseason, but we got to figure out right tackle while you're suspended. So we're going to send you down to the threes and then figure it out to be able to handle it while you're gone. But that doesn't seem to be the approach with Arden Key. Is he still out there running like a starter?
Yep.
Or was he over the weekend?
He is with the starting defense. And, Weaver gets reps here or there, but Weaver is very clearly a 2 in his rep count. And for those of you asking about Murphy or Shane Ray, They have not done anything to be overwhelmingly noticeable, nor Jalen Harrell, the 7th-round pick out of Michigan. They have not done anything to be overwhelmingly noticeable, nor do I have great expectations of them. Weaver is the guy that everybody should be looking at, and to Rashad Weaver's credit, he has changed his body yet again in another offseason, because last offseason he was trying to put on a tremendous amount of weight and be better about setting the edge. Muscle, not just weight, but muscle. And apparently he wasn't crazy about the way that he was able to move or not move, or his explosiveness was not up to where he wanted it to be. So again, he has changed his body, and there are clear and obvious dividends of that. Will he still struggle in the run game? Perhaps. We'll find out. But, somebody said in the chat, Ryan on YouTube, I do wonder if Weaver could replicate his 2022 season when Harold Landry was out. And I would point out to you that Rashad Weaver was not any kind of revelation in the 2022 season. They just needed another body out there because Harold couldn't go. So I don't, if he was to replicate your 2022 season, you would be wanting still for pass rush help.
Yeah, 2022, Weaver played in 16 games, 5.5 sacks, couple of forced fumbles. But I'm trying to remember who else was part of that pass rushing. Danico Autry.
Bud
was still here in 2022.
Sparingly.
Yeah.
So there was a lot better help surround. Now, listen, Jeff and Sweat have done nothing but cave offensive linemen's heads in for the past couple of days, and they've been doing it without any kind of, pushing and shoving, really, at training camp. You'll hear from Brian Callahan on that after the first day of practice, or padded practice, went the way that it did. Things have since turned into a more controlled, aggressive environment.
But still, he chipped in 5.5 sacks. He has not had a sack in any of the other 2 seasons he has played.
Yes.
Rashad Weaver. 21 and 23. He did not register a sack. He had 5.5 in 2022.
And 2021, worth noting that he snapped his leg.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He did snap his leg. So he did
He
miss.
played in 2 games.
I think that's right. So I'm not out on Weaver by any stretch of the imagination. You have no choice but to be in on Weaver because of the circumstance that at some point lies before you. It is expected that Arden Key is going to be suspended. When that officially comes down from the league, we wait to see.
Those guys are going to get a lot of run in the preseason. That outside linebacker group.
Just like the corner. You're basically running second string defense. Sweat, Jeff, and Murray and Gibbons are going to be out there. The rest of it is going to be kind of mixed and matched, right? Trey Avery is playing a lot of corner right now because Cheeto Awuzie is not available. Snead is being managed the way that he is, and I do not have any kind of great expectation that he's going to play in the preseason. His goal is regular season. And if he said yesterday, he spoke to the media after not practicing, that if he was up to it, if that was a part of the plan and the plan, called for him to play in the preseason, that he would be available, but he maintains his goal as regular season. That's fine. But you're talking about pieces and parts all over the place with defense, including Quandre Diggs now and Jamal Adams, who has not practiced, who's been out for the past 2 days. They have not provided medical reasons why, the way that they have for a lot of other players. We're getting injury updates, Lucas. I don't know what to do with myself at these Brian Callahan press conferences.
I love the specificity. Jarvis Brownlee, he's got a blister. Okay, we're good. Blister.
Love that.
Doesn't mean, take care of it, figure it out, and then he'll be good week 1. Nothing serious.
Swell.
Instead of watching him limp around and then we don't hear anything about it.
Hey, Coach, Caleb Farley, what happened? He jogged in the other day. We're being precautionary, some hamstring tightness. Okay, great. I can move on. I don't have to, we don't have to spend day after day, hour after hour parsing what could it be, what happened here. Go back and watch the Zapruder film of how it was that Caleb Farley came to have hamstring tightness in a practice. That's what it is.
But yeah, no Jamal Adams. Do we think it's a management thing like L'Jarius Sneed, which they have been open about?
They have never said that there is a management program in place that Jamal Adams required, only that he cleared his physical. And now, after a couple of days of practice, he has not been, to date, available. Will he be out there by Wednesday? Remains to be seen. Wednesday is the next day that is open to us. Titans, I believe, are off today.
It has been, according to Jim Wyatt, rest. Because Jim kind of gives his practice observations. He sums up who's not out there. And Chidobe Awuzie, in parentheses, calf. Like you said, Caleb Farley, in parentheses, hamstring. Jamal Adams, in parentheses, it says rest.
And they've talked about this, right? The GPS tracking and how they're determining, the load management. And he's not an old player by any stretch of the imagination, but he has played a lot of football for 28. He's been in the league for 8 years, so it's not inconsequential. It could very well just be that, and much ado about nothing. But right now he's not available, and Elijah Molden has been playing safety. Molden, who has been available. Hooker, who has been available. Guys like Matt Jackson and Anthony Kendall, and I saw Shy Carter make a play for the first time in training camp, or at least noticed Shy Carter. I don't want to say that he's not made a single play in training camp, but I noticed Shy Carter out there making a play for the first time yesterday watching practice. They clearly think their safety depth is insufficient, including Adams on whatever the case may be with him, rest, injury, or otherwise. And now they move forward with Quandre Diggs, who is going to come in to be a starter. This is a starting running mate for Amani Hooker. This is not, all right, if something happens to Elijah Molden, we have a veteran who's played a lot. No, this is a guy who can go right now.
Well, they'll compete. Quandre Diggs,
Sure.
they don't have an open seat for him. Oh, we have a table right here for you, sir, starting right next to Amani Hooker. But it doesn't mean
musical chairs in the Titan secondary.
It doesn't change what we thought to be Jamal Adams' role, does it?
No.
Right.
Which has been my position from the start, which is why I had the reaction that I had the day that he was signed, and it broke live on air, which is like, to do what? Play linebacker? Because they need a starting safety, and now they have one.
Put him on the edge.
I mean,
go get him. Give him the green light, right?
But you make jokes, but like they got to figure it out some way. I saw Cedric Gray on blitzes yesterday. Obviously, Sweat and Jeff are wreaking havoc.
Kenneth Murray
on the inside of that. Kenneth Murray, who, based on practice feedback and what we're seeing with our own eyes, admitting that I am not, overwhelmingly skilled in the evaluation of off-ball linebacker play. I will tell you that Kenneth Murray looks impressive out there, and that Jack Gibbons, who had a tip drill interception to, was it to Trey Avery? I believe he tipped a pick up to. Either way, they are making enough plays. They are growing as a unit together, and you can also see the offense finding answers to the problems that to date the defense and Denard Wilson and Tavondre Sweat and everything else has presented them. That's the kind of growth and development that you want to see. There are a ton of other things that happened to practice, including Nicholas Petit-Frere, who came back off physically unable to perform list. You'll hear from him. We will also get to Mason Rudolph, backup quarterback competition, because it is now a competition, and the head coach speaking on Tavondre Sweat. All that later on, but coming up next, there's a lot of news happening with the University of Tennessee football team. They gained a quarterback, but they lost a defensive back. We'll tell you the news coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. So you want the good news first or the bad? How you want to start this with the University of Tennessee football team?
Ooh, are you a bad news first, good news second kind of guy?
No, I like the good vibes on the front end, and then I like to bring people crashing down afterwards.
No, okay, let's do bad news first.
All right, you got it.
Defensive back Judon Thomas is out for the 2024 season, according to VolQuest, a branch, of course, of On3 Sports. Thomas figured to slide into the starting nickel role for this Tennessee defense, coordinated by Tim Banks. He is out for the season, and the first thing I thought about when I saw this news was Boo Carter, the freshman, the highly recruited athlete out of Chattanooga, who was competing at that spot and at some return spots. He's going to be on the field in one way or another, or he was going to before Judon Thomas was hurt, but now they need him to, and he needs to step up and make this spot his own because there's not going to be a lot more by way of depth beyond Judon Thomas and Boo Carter at the nickel spot. There are other guys that can work in there, but in terms of talent, athleticism, and upside, Tennessee needs Boo Carter to step into this role. But this is a big blow. Judon Thomas had kind of turned into a leader on this defense and had brought some solidity and consistency there to that group going into his junior year. So this is the first big injury blow to Tennessee's season, but Boo Carter has got to make this opportunity his as a true freshman.
So from bad news there to good news, another splash in the world of recruiting for the University of Tennessee after what is being described as a massive push from Josh Heupel, from Joey Halsley, the offensive coordinator, and the rest of their staff paid off when they landed 5-star quarterback Faison Brandon of Greensboro, North Carolina, who has officially announced his commitment to the Volunteers. Quote, I started feeling Tennessee a while ago. This is Faison Brandon to On3 Sports. They started recruiting me early, and the first impression they made on me was unlike any other. The staff recruited me hard from the get-go. They kept it steady with me, and they pushed hard to get me. All of that made an impact on why I picked them. He is the #1 gunslinger in the junior class, according to On3 Sports.
We talked about it Friday. This is the best quarterback recruiting run in program history, and it's the best active quarterback recruiting run in college football to go from Nico Iamaleava to 4-star Jake Merklinger, who's a freshman this year competing for a backup spot, to the #1 quarterback in the state, in George McIntyre of Brentwood Academy, to the #1 quarterback in the country in 2026 in Faison Brandon out of North Carolina. So interesting stuff this morning from his high school coach with Ramon, Kayla, and Will. But Josh Heupel has found a groove in quarterback recruiting.
Let's hear from his high school, Faison Brandon's high school football coach, who was on the morning show today.
No, they've done a great job. I mean, they've been here quite a bit whenever they are allowed to be here and around. And Faison's been up to UT several times, been to games, and has really just become comfortable with their staff and Coach Heupel and all those guys. And says he loves it there. He says it feels like home every time he's up there. He's just become more comfortable the more he's around. And then also he has a pretty good relationship with Hendon Hooker, who is a Greensboro guy as well. And Hendon's dad and Faison have trained and done some things through the years. So that's also a good connection for him. And obviously doesn't hurt as far as the recruiting process when you got a guy like Hendon Hooker talking to you about UT as well.
How about that? Hendon Hooker with the assist.
Well, remember when Hooker was drafted and he fell maybe a little bit more than we thought he would to the 3rd round, or maybe it was just right coming off the ACL injury, the offense that he ran in college. But there was kind of this discourse about, okay, Tennessee's going to have to prove that this offense can carry over, that these guys can be stars in the NFL for it to really translate in recruiting in a meaningful way. And they haven't had to do that, at least not at the quarterback position. Like Hendon Hooker has not had to get in a game and show that he can play in the NFL in order for Josh Heupel to continue having success recruiting quarterbacks. But they have the sample size that if you come here, you are going to be productive. You are going to be in one of the fastest and, when it's working, best offenses in college football. You are going to have NIL opportunities, and you are going to have your opportunity to be picked in the NFL draft and make your mark there. We just haven't seen any of those players really make their mark yet. Tillman, Hyatt, Hooker was pretty much rehabbing all of last year, but I wonder what more that could do for recruiting if one of those guys breaks through in a meaningful way. Like Velus Jones, didn't really happen with him, but obviously it has not bothered Josh Heupel and his staff in continuing the recruiting momentum at quarterback. So, yeah, good news at quarterback, bad news at defensive back, which has been a pretty heavy theme of the Heupel era at Tennessee over the last few years.
Yeah, and to your point, I saw Austin Price quoted as saying, who covers, of course, the Vols for VolQuest, talking about stacking arms. They're just stacking arms at this point in the quarterback room with Nico, with Merklinger, with George McIntyre, like you said, and now Faison Brandon, who just turned 16. Just recently turned 16.
Class of 2026. That's crazy. I mean, Brandon points out on the F&M Bank chat, Tennessee was the first SEC school to offer him, ended up turning into the number one player. So early evaluations and early offers help. And that is one thing this staff has been very, very good with, at getting in early on these prospects and watching them rise up to a status that has every Power 5 program wanting them. And Brandon sticks with the school that kind of got in on the ground floor, so to speak. So tons of optimism there and a little bit of concern in the defensive backfield. I can't wait to see how that turns out this year. With how deep the defense is elsewhere, and they're better, they're more athletic in the secondary, but how much can that be helped? Can that group be helped by how good the front seven projects to be? Because there's no question the secondary has struggled, but it also has been left out on an island a little bit, with Tennessee having some struggles to get home up front. And that got better last year with James Pierce having a breakout season, and it stands to take a big leap this year with what they have coming back on the defensive line and at edge rusher.
There's some additional quotes from Faison Brandon's high school coach, Darryl Brown, who was on Ramon, Kayla, and Will this morning. Obviously, as a quarterback, he's the leader of our offense, but we need him to be the leader of our team in the locker room when he's on the sideline, when our defense is on the field, and really just continuing to mature and grow in those areas. And I know he will, because he wants to and he works at it. That's not something we just tell him that we want him to do. We try to give him the tools and help and ways to help him do that. Apparently, he was in the building at 6:30 this morning in the weight room, getting work in with the offensive skill guys that they have there at, Grimsley High School is the name, where Faison Brandon plays currently as he wraps up his high school career. He grasps all that stuff. He's a guy that's hungry. I mean, he's here this morning, 6:30 in the morning in the weight room, yada, yada, yada. So all the good stuff, all the boxes that you want to hear and see checked, apparently he does them.
They're going to have options at quarterback for the very foreseeable future. What does that mean for a guy like Jake Merklinger, though, who's on campus and is competing? But
yeah, how do you manage that right now in today's day and age with quarterbacks? Because you can't make decisions that would actively hinder your football program. And it's tough to kind of come to terms with that, I'm sure, if you're a high school recruit or a college recruit who is dealing with these kind of things and understanding, but what about my opportunity that you said I was here to compete for? And all of a sudden that opportunity gets washed away because the next cycle comes in, and you have to keep pace that way. You have to be able to stack arms. So what do they plan on doing with all these quarterbacks is something I see being asked in the YouTube comments. And, I'm sure there's some question marks in their own building about, all right, how do we keep the most amount of talented players from dip setting in the offseason and heading to the transfer portal and, starting for Trent Dilfer. Where's Trent Dilfer? South Alabama?
UAB. But they've staggered them, right? So you don't have three quarterbacks coming in one cycle. Merklinger is there. He's competing with Gaston Moore, who's like in his 9th year of college football, walk-on, who came from UCF with Heupel to Tennessee, knows this offense like the back of his hand. So does Jake Merklinger work into a backup spot, which I wonder if Nico is to leave for a quarter, I bet Gaston Moore would come in because he can run the offense and he can be trusted to do so. But if, a worst-case scenario were to happen and Nico had to miss multiple games, I wonder if Merklinger would end up being the guy, depending on just how he's developed, and only the coaching staff would know that, just because of the higher upside. That remains to be seen. But we already saw it with Taven Jackson, the 4-star quarterback who's now at Indiana, was a 4-star coming out and realized Nico was going to jump him. Nico was going to be the guy in what was coming in behind him, and he decided to go. There was no animosity in the process. But yeah, that's just part of the game. But they've staggered these players. They're coming in different years, and there is a sample size of a quarterback like Nico waiting his turn and waiting a year to develop, to put the weight on that he needs to before finally getting to marshal the offense. So they have set that precedent a little bit as well for these guys.
Marshal the offense. That sounds like such a broadcaster term, to marshal the offense. I like that. Sounds very official.
You're free to use it.
615-737-1045 is the number. It is game week in the NFL for all 32 NFL clubs. Preseason right around the corner. Titans will host the San Francisco 49ers on Saturday, as a matter of fact. How many starters they will play remains to be seen. But given that it is an NFL game week, do you have NFL headlines?
I've got a few.
That's next.
It is 11:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. The Tennessee Titans have signed free agent safety Quandre Diggs. Adam Schefter reporting it is a one-year deal worth up to $5 million. The 31-year-old three-time Pro Bowler reunites with Jamal Adams, his former teammate in Seattle. Titans were on the practice field Saturday and Sunday. Offensive tackle Nicholas Petit-Frere was back at it after being taken off the physically unable to perform list, and he met with the media to talk about how he's ramping up into the right tackle competition.
You know, it's camp. So there's a lot more days for me to grind, for me to compete, for me to get better. And I don't think anyone's at where we want to be at. There's a lot more that we have to do, not only individually, but as a team. So those are going to be the days. These are the days I'll have to keep building, keep getting better, keep actually seeing myself on film, see what I can do to get better and find ways to help the team win.
The Tennessee Vols secondary took a big hit over the weekend as defensive back Jordan Thomas will miss the 2024 season with a knee injury, according to a report by VolQuest. The Vols did pick up a commitment from five-star quarterback Faison Brandon on Saturday. The Greensboro, North Carolina native is rated the number one quarterback in the 2026 class on 247 Sports. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second hour already underway. Training camp not happening today. We are off the practice field. We are back in the studio. Thanks for hanging out. Saturday and Sunday, the Titans were in full pads, and we have a ton of different observations to get into with you. You'll hear from J.C. Latham, Brian Callahan, Nicholas Petit-Frere back at practice, among others. And of course, the news as of about 6:30 p.m. last night is that Quandre Diggs is coming in to be a starting safety for this defense. 615-737-1045 is the number, the FNM Bank chat. You can hang out with us, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Leave us a like if you're live streaming on YouTube. We always appreciate it. Before we do more Titans observations, league-wide, since it is a game week, do you have any kind of NFL headlines that are noteworthy?
It's time for headlines with Lucas Panzica.
I hated that one worse than I hated the normal one.
So
that was rude.
One of the headlines around the NFL over the weekend would be the Titans signing free agent safety Quandre Diggs, 1 year, up to $5 million. We have covered that. The Miami Dolphins have agreed to a restructured contract for wide receiver Tyreek Hill, worth $90 million over the next 3 years, $65 million in guaranteed money. No new years on the 4-year, $120 million contract he initially signed in 2022, but the updated guarantees go up to $106.5 million. That is the most ever for a wide receiver in the NFL.
His average is still pretty low, though, on an average annual basis compared to the rest of the market based on what everybody else got, because he's still, I mean, he's in the top 10 with the restructure, but he's 8th on the top 10. And Tyreek Hill is, I mean, would not argue one of the most important non-quarterbacks in professional football? Again
Easily.
This year?
Oh, yeah. 100%. But he's got those guarantees.
The guaranteed money matters more than anything, right? Because the rest of it's just monopoly money and incentives and things like that. Justin Jefferson, right now the top of the heap is Justin Jefferson and Davante Adams tied for the biggest contracts, and the total value, both are on contracts that are $140 million in total. On an average annual basis, it's Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Forgive me, Tyreek Hill is 4th, not 8th. So he is in the top 5 with the restructure. He was in the top 8 in terms of total contract value, the $90 million. But the $30 million on an average annual basis puts him 4th above his teammate, just above his teammate, Jalen Waddle, who's at 28.5. Davante Adams, DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Smith, and Nico Collins of the Houston Texans round out the top 10 wide receivers on an average annual salary.
Tyreek did end up number 1 on the NFL top 100 players list, as voted on by NFL players.
Yeah, Snead was asked about that yesterday, and he didn't care to comment. He said, what he's done in the past is great. What we'll do, in the because Snead, famously, Tyreek Hill killer.
Yes.
So we will see how that pairs itself out. L'Jarius Snead not in the top 100, as I understand it?
Yeah, I haven't seen the 20s and 30s, but I figured he'd be in that range. Was he not? I mean, I didn't see it pop up at all.
Somebody had sent me a tweet. Outrage. I had gotten a stray tweet, I think, about outrage of L'Jarius Snead not being in the top 100. I don't know if that's accurate.
Tyreek Hill is the first ever receiver to get the top spot in this specific ranking.
It is interesting that he's over Mahomes.
Yeah, Mahomes is 4. Yeah. I mean, you got Lamar 2, McCaffrey 3, Mahomes 4. Myles Garrett
this is
was
such
5.
a players poll.
Yeah, I did not see Tyreek Hill. I will continue. To look. I thought C.J. Stroud.
You did not see L'Jarius Snead.
What did I say?
Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, excuse me. I did not see Snead. C.J. Stroud at 20 was a little. I don't know. He's already the 20th best player in the National Football League.
This is why I hate this thing, because the players game plan for numbers, not individual players. It's kind of like doing a fan poll almost. And even I think a fan poll would come back not with Tyreek Hill as the number 1 overall player in the NFL. The players are always interesting to see, and it's interesting to see where their heads are at with all this. And it's not like every player in the NFL voted Tyreek Hill the number 1 player.
So I think Jeff did end up being the only Titan.
L'Jarius Snead not in the top 100, huh?
Yeah, Jeff 73.
Yeah, that's nonsense.
I am not seeing Snead on here. Anyway, the Rams wide receiver Puka Nacua, who was 33 on this list, by the way, after his one of the best rookie years by a
Jeff
receiver
is 73
ever.
And Puka Nacua. I mean, Puka Nacua is a good player, but
hey,
come on.
5th rounder who had the best rookie season for a wide receiver in NFL history. He is week to week, though, with a knee injury. Adam Schefter saying that it is not serious, but starting to see some of these pop up around the NFL. The most significant that we've seen is probably Justin Herbert, who's going to be in a boot for the next couple weeks. They say he'll be ready for week 1 against the Raiders.
And if he's not, that Ryan Tannehill's music, baby.
Oh.
Come on down.
Jim Harbaugh.
That is that would make the most sense in the world for a run-heavy offense, the way that one is set up. A Tannehill-assance, perhaps, in Los Angeles.
But Puka Nacua week to week at the moment. But this was from last week, the Justin Herbert news. That is significant, though, that he'll miss multiple weeks of training camp under Jim Harbaugh with this new system.
Well, let's start with the Rams before we talk about the Chargers, because Tyler Higbee's already on PUP. They're starting tight end. The Rams have the unenviable task of replacing Aaron Donald this year, which is it's not an inconsequential thing, obviously. And they drafted 2 interior defensive linemen with both their 1st and 2nd round picks, both of them from Florida State, and Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, who was a bit of a draft darling for a lot of people. I know Rhett Bryan very, very high on Braden Fisk. A lot of people high on Braden Fisk, understandably so. But their offense, I feel okay about. Tyler Johnson is there. They have Cooper Kupp still, who is getting up there in years, and they have a couple of undrafted guys and a 6th round pick in Jordan Whittington, who is currently in their wide receiver room, along with Demarcus Robinson, your darling, your boy, the light of your life, apple of your eye, Demarcus Robinson.
Oh, I just wanted the Titans to sign anyone last year at wide receiver. And
no, you didn't want them to sign anyone. It just kept coming back to Demarcus Robinson, who couldn't get you off it. It was very weird.
I don't know why his name
hated Will Levis famously. He was in love with Demarcus Robinson. So we were still just kind of waiting for the dividends on that.
Don't listen to anything I say.
Tutu Atwell also there. I completely forgot he was a 2nd round pick by the Rams. He's a very, very small human being, and he has not delivered anything of consequence for a 2nd round pick today. So, to your point about the Chargers, that would be my only thought about the Chargers situation. If he is not ready for week 1 of the regular season, as they expect him to be, because plantar fasciitis is, have you ever had that?
No.
It's unpleasant. I had to be in a boot for a hot second, because it's some kind of, and I'm not clearly a doctor or anything like this, but there's something in your foot that gets strained or stretched, and it felt like I had snapped something on the bottom of my foot. I couldn't step correctly, and I had to be in a boot for, it wasn't more than a couple of days. Obviously, I'm not a professional athlete. I'm not Justin Herbert. I'm not doing the things with my feet that Justin Herbert needs to do. But plantar fasciitis is uncomfortable, but not insurmountable.
In other news, 2 veteran quarterbacks coming off Achilles injuries look good, look healthy.
Kirk Cousins out there talking smack.
In the early
See
portion
that?
of training camp. Yeah, the Falcons had an open practice at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Cousins is out there. He's running around. He's slinging it around. He does not look like he has any limitations put on him. And same goes for Aaron Rodgers. The Jets have had 9 practices in training camp, including a 90-minute intra-squad scrimmage on Saturday. And Robert Saleh said to the media after the scrimmage that Rodgers, quote, looks like he never missed any time. So 2 guys either approaching or at 40 coming off Achilles injuries that look good to go at this point in training camp.
Did you listen to Diana's interview with Cousins? The one she was on here promoting before she had talked to Tannehill and then talked to Kirk Cousins afterwards?
I saw multiple clips of it.
Kirk is in this space where he's just being very, very transparent about everything that's going on in his life, which I appreciate because quarterbacks rarely are that way. He was excellent last year before the injury. I see no reason why he couldn't be better. I mean, losing Justin Jefferson hurts, and they don't have a Justin Jefferson out there. They got a lot of fun skill players running around.
They don't have a bunch of scrubs out there.
No, that's what I'm saying. Well, but they've yet to be anything consistently that you can count on. And you can say that they have been robbed by terrible quarterback play.
By Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ritter throwing them the ball, and Taylor Heineke.
Look at you taking out Marcus
with
that
no
way.
disrespect to those 3, but yes, I can see why.
Put it on the poll. Put this on the poll. Is it always disrespect when you say no disrespect, but? Because it is
you don't want to play this game. You don't want to play this game.
Why don't I want to play this game?
Because you're the man that came on here a few weeks ago, and I understand hatchet's been buried. I don't want to bring anything up, reopen any wounds, but out here yelling about Jeffrey Simmons being soft and whiny on social media, and then when I said that you were ripping, you said I'm not ripping the guy.
I didn't think I was ripping the guy.
You called him a soft and whiny baby. You cannot tell me that is not ripping.
That word was not used. Nobody called Jeffrey Simmons a baby. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, thank you. Can I get some reckless speculation,
all right.
please?
You didn't go as far as baby, but you called him soft and whiny.
I said the behavior was soft and whiny.
Yes. So, and you were like, oh, that's constructive criticism. Yes,
it is constructive criticism.
If that's your version of constructive criticism.
I said to Jeff last week. I've already been through this. You want to do it again?
I'm just saying. You don't want to play that game.
I did play that game.
The last bit of headlines is we're starting to see some of these come through. Commanders quarterback Judon Daniels will play against the Jets on Saturday in the preseason. Don't know about Aaron Rodgers.
I would not.
I would advise against it, but Judon Daniels will be out there for the Commanders for the first time.
It's less ceremonial if he's running out with the American flag before a preseason game and his Achilles goes. Well, to your point about Rodgers, quickly, it has been a while since we've seen him play high-level football, right? Like, it's not a small amount of time that has passed since the last time we saw Aaron Rodgers be a high-level quarterback. So, from a football standpoint, whatever you think of him personally, and I know people have opinions, I would like to see Aaron Rodgers return to form, because if he's going to be, this big of a headache league-wide, then at least he needs to be good at football to put up with the rest of it. And then to Judon Daniels, Greg Cosell had some really, really great analysis of Judon Daniels. We're doing team-by-team previews, and of course, keeping you up to date with the latest on the Titans. But as we work our way through the preseason, we're also previewing other teams, and a lot of these teams on the Titans schedule. Commanders, one of them. I think it's December the 1st, or it's the first week of December that the Titans will be on the road in Washington. He's one of the most interesting players in the NFL based on how they use him, because it's Cliff Kingsbury is the OC there. And I don't know if they're going to do the same thing that they did with Kyler. Those aren't similar players. But I'm fascinated to see what coordinator Cliff does as opposed to head coach Cliff. Those the headlines?
They are.
Excellent. We'll get back to Titan stuff. Nicholas Petit-Frere spoke to the media. He returned to the practice field for the first time in quite some time. You'll hear from him coming up next. So, you got a new safety in Quandre Diggs. He is coming here on a 1-year, up to $5 million deal. The team has not yet officially announced the transaction, but Adam Schefter did report the news yesterday. Titans off the practice field today. There will be a closed session tomorrow. There will be Wednesday and Thursday open to us and to, it sounds like more fans will be able to attend on Wednesday and Thursday in the lead up for the game, the preseason game against the San Francisco 49ers, in which the starters are expected to play. So this will be, as close to a normal game week for all intents and purposes as we've had in a long, long time, because it's been a while since starters known quantifiably going to play in the preseason, especially quarterback, running back, that kind of thing.
The return of Titans legend Josh Dobbs to Nissan Stadium.
Oh, that's right. He's the Niners backup.
That's right.
Fun. Oh, I wonder if Shanahan do anything with Dobbs.
Preseason star Josh Dobbs. That dude knows how to shine in the preseason.
Okay, well, you don't have any biases whatsoever about the level of shine that Josh Dobbs, who just got his first career start 2 years ago after being in the league for 6 years.
Go look up Joshua Dobbs preseason highlights. They are all over the place.
Listen, you are not going to turn this into a segment where we're dumping on our buddy Josh Dobbs, but, let's not get nuts. So, with that, there's a couple of different things. I'm just going to have that song in the back of my head for the next 6 months. I'm prepared for it. Coming to Nissan Stadium and the Titans playing at home at Nissan Stadium, the expectation is that we will see the starting offensive line, or at least this iteration of the starting offensive line, provided that nothing happened in the next couple of days of practice. That starting offensive line may well include Nicholas Petit-Frere, who was right back into the mix, no restrictions, working with the ones in certain settings. He didn't get all of the first-team reps because John Ojukwu continues to compete there. Leroy Watson continues to compete there. Dylan Radin's working for Sadiq Charles, who missed the past couple of days with a personal reason. Did not disclose any more information beyond that, but Radin's getting the snaps there at right guard in his absence. NPF right back in the middle of everything, though, after dealing with a shoulder injury that ended his 2023 and a knee scope that apparently he had to have. He was cleared medically from the shoulder ahead of the offseason program and then required the knee scope right before, the way that he said it, right before media came back out there and had to shut him down for the spring. Listen to Nicholas Petit-Frere speak in this clip where he's asked about, how confident he is in winning this job back as the Titans starting right tackle, because to date, it is still an open competition.
Well, I've done it twice, so, why not a third time? But it's just the NFL. It's always been a competition. From when I was playing Little League football to now, everything about football is about competing and getting better. You're not going to have players, especially in NFL, that aren't ready to compete, that aren't ready to earn a starting job. It's the most competitive league in all of sport. And I knew that coming in here. So that's been my mindset every single day. That's why every single time, that's why when I told people when I first came into the NFL, I said my only goal is to help the team win. Because I understand the competition is already built in. I understand the great players are already built in. And it's up to me to find a way to become a great player, for me to grind, for me to show the team that I care about them. I care about making sure that we win, making sure that we find a way to become a better team and get ourselves to a Super Bowl.
Now, it's not the full press conference. In the full press conference, I don't know, what did we talk to Nick about? 10 minutes when he got up there. This was after Saturday's practice, I want to say. And he had been cleared from PUP on Friday. He had participated in the closed session, and then they determined, all right, no restrictions. Get him out there. And Bill Callahan got him out there and got into him pretty quick and got him into the mix pretty quick. Their goal, and I think we talked about this with maybe Brad Hopkins when he was on the show with us Wednesday, or perhaps it was off to the side. I can't remember exactly where we had this conversation with either Ramon or Brad, forgive me. But somebody pointed out how much harder Bill Callahan was making the individual sessions for the offensive linemen, so that by the time they get to Sweat and Jeff and Sebastian Joseph Day and the rest of this, that it is not easier, but that they've already been through the worst of their day. Now, it's not easy dealing with Sweat and Jeff and Arden and Harold Landry, but at least they're more prepared for it because the grueling part of it is the individual periods at this point. And Nicholas Petit-Frere is dropped right into the fire because there was no ramp up. There has been a ramp up, I guess, for him, But in terms of the physical execution of all the different things that they've been working on prior to training camp and now into training camp on sleds and bags and all these other things that Bill Callahan has out there for them to work with, Petit Frere just, sounded relieved at the podium. If you're so inclined to go back and watch his full interview with us, his full press conference with us on Saturday, you will notice it almost feels like a weight lifted off of him in the same way that it kind of sounded like with Chig, when Chig got to the podium and talked about the vibes around the facility. Now, I don't know how much that is previous coaching staff related. I don't know how much of that is that Nick hasn't practiced with a helmet and shoulder pads on since Halloween of 2023. It's been a minute. So to a certain point, he's just happy to be back out there doing his job and doing the thing that he has worked all of his life to do.
I bet he's felt the urgency. This is
yes.
one of, if not the most up for grabs starting position on offense or defense. And he's had to be sidelined watching it from afar as John Ojukwu and Jalen Duncan get all the reps. So, yes, I imagine the urgency was very, very high for Nicholas Petit Frere during the first 10 or so days of camp that he missed.
So, I see some comments from your dear friend Dixie on YouTube, Lucas.
Hello, Dixie.
My old friend.
What's the last name on that, Lucas?
Enormous. There has to be plenty of space in between.
On YouTube, says NPF yapping. Just win the starting job, all the other stuff for the Birds. That's what he's saying. I've already done it twice. I'll do it again. Bet you I won't. Watch him. That's the energy that NPF is giving off there. And it's a different kind of energy than we've gotten from Nick basically since I haven't seen Nick be that kind of talkative or comfortable or relaxed in a setting like that since the night he got damn drafted. And we were all like, oh, this will be fun. He's an actual talker. And then very much he wasn't the next, I guess this is 3 or 4. This is
year 3.
This is year 3 for NPF. And last year, not a sample size worth it. Nick looked pretty good out there. It is not the same Nicholas Petit Frere that we saw running with the threes and struggling last year, Lucas. Now, preseason will also tell us a fair amount. I would expect him to play quite a bit in the preseason to try and work some of the kinks out there. But he's definitely not the same player that we saw struggling with the Titans' third-string defense in camp.
He seems more confident. And even just talking to the media, he seems comfortable. But if I'm Nicholas Petit Frere, I sure as hell feel like that's my job to lose, right? Like, look around. John Ojukwu is a UDFA at a Boise State who's played good football for a UDFA at a Boise State in his second year as a pro. Jalen Duncan, 6th-round pick in his second year as a pro, still kind of trying to find his way. If I'm Nicholas Petit Frere, I'm saying I've got, how many starts under my belt at this point?
He had 2 technically last year. One was a left tackle.
It was, and started almost every game of 2022.
He played 16 of 17. They sat him that Cowboys game because they were trying to keep guys healthy.
If I'm NPF, I'm saying I'm a 3rd-round pick. I'm approaching 20 career NFL starts. I've got way more experience than either of the other 2 guys in this competition. Yes, this should be my job to lose, 100%.
So, not just Nicholas Petit Frere that obviously you're keeping an eye on, though the right side of the offensive line is significantly less settled than the left side. What's settled on the left side is J.C. Latham and Peter Skoronski, and of course Lloyd Cushenberry anchoring at the center position. But there are still some growing pains for J.C. Latham. It has not been smooth sailing out there. If you've been reading practice observations or maybe you've been out to practice, what you've noticed is that the defense, as Coach Mack said, for 38 years, the defense in the first couple of weeks of training camp has been ahead of the offense. That's not new. But the defensive line is giving the offensive line considerable struggles. Latham has held his own, and it has been not to the point where you notice, all right, that's clearly a right tackle playing left tackle. But there are some things that stand out that he's having to adjust to, like the way that he just generally gets down in his stance. This is J.C. Latham speaking yesterday to media. He was one of the podium players about working against Jeffrey Simmons, for example, and then you'll hear a follow-up from me about asking him where specifically Jeff has helped him sharpen his tools, as he called them.
I mean, you don't really want to create bad energy throughout practice. Two alpha dogs, just competing. He's the best, defensive tackle in the game. So every day I'm going to show up and, just try to sharpen my game going against him every single day. It might get chippy at the end of the day, but, that's what it is.
Where do you think you've been able to sharpen your game?
Say again?
Where do you think you've been able to sharpen your game?
Really just paying attention to details. I gave up something down here in the backed up period. He rushed the inside of me, and usually you don't really see something like that. So just being attentive to detail with how you're coming off with your feet, your hands, and make sure they're in the right places. Otherwise, you get edge and have a bad play. So
how much are you looking forward?
That is J.C. Latham speaking about a couple of alphas going at it, Jeff Simmons and J.C. Latham. You'll hear from Brian Callahan later on the level of controlled aggression they've been able to have at practice since that first day on last Tuesday, where emotions ran overboard, we'll say. But Latham's making progress. Latham is the least of your concerns, though there are some things to monitor with Latham, right? How he does against live game reps against San Francisco, who famously has always had not just good frontline starters on their defensive line, but good depth. They're constantly finding, and I know he's not on their roster this year, but like the Cleveland Farrells of the world who are rehabbing their career come through San Francisco and all of a sudden look like significantly better players than they did in their previous spots. Latham and the stance thing, I was talking to Teron Davenport about this yesterday, trying to figure out how to describe it, but it's very boxy. He looks so square in his stance based on his where he hinges at his hip and how wide his feet are spread apart. And I don't know necessarily, I'd have to ask Ramon or Brad about this as to whether anything that he's doing is an outright tell. Like, can they tell when he's getting ready to pass block? Can they tell when he's getting ready to run the football? I'm not intelligent enough to discern that based on what I'm seeing, but I can tell that his stance is different than every other player, and it's not like every other player has worked with Bill Callahan before this as well. This is specific to J.C. Latham, and I'll be curious to see how they kind of tinker with that to get him in the best. Maybe they don't have to tinker with it much. Maybe it's just how he's comfortable playing, and you have to kind of adjust to that, but something to note if you're watching J.C. Latham out there and you see something in particular that catches your eye.
Well, how did they answer your question if he has a tell?
Brad and Ramon?
Yeah.
I haven't asked him yet.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying you were asking them the other day.
No. I will have to ask them.
Yeah, that's a good question because it was fascinating to hear L'Jarius Sneed talking about that in regards to Treylon Burks. Did you catch that?
No, I didn't.
Sneed
I was over there for that.
Talking about just some of the ways that maybe it was Burks talking about what he's learned from Sneed. I can't remember who I was listening to.
I was over there for both of those, and I don't remember either of them.
About Sneed having conversations with him in going up against him in 1v1s and pointing out certain tells that Treylon Burks has and him adjusting them on the fly. And Burks is going into year 3. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I bet there's a lot of that with J.C. Latham that would be really interesting to hear from somebody that actually knows what they're seeing when it comes to offensive line play.
Harold Hockett on YouTube is pointing out that Ramon and Brad have both talked about calling out his different stance. I don't know what calling out specifically means, but maybe they've just noticed it and talked about it in ways that are more intelligent. So it's a good reason to listen all day long because you'll hear all kinds of different insights and analysis about the things that we're able to see. So, of all the other things that we talked about, it's been trench focused. I will admit to you, Lucas, I have gotten away from watching one-on-ones against receivers and defensive backs this camp because I'm infinitely more interested in the one-on-ones that are going on between offensive linemen and defensive linemen. I'm watching a lot more, Isaiah Aiton I'm not more than I'm watching Calvin Ridley, but I've probably seen as much of those depth defensive linemen, TK McClendon, Marlon Davidson, because those guys aren't irrelevant here, and they have to figure out what that rotation looks like. Sebastian Joseph Day is holding his own, and that's what you expect. He's been a quality player, a quality starter throughout the course of his career, as former team captain, so don't have any issues there or any kind of quibbles there with what they've brought in him specifically. But I've spent most of my time over there watching Tracy Rocker and Bill Callahan as much as I have with Tyke Tolbert or any of the other coaches to try and learn and glean as much as I can about how they're getting it done. All I can tell you about Tracy Rocker is that man is having the time of his life out there coaching defensive line, and he does so much of it just walking them through it. And you would, I don't know, it's definitely different because it's not like they're not doing different kinds of drills and stuff like that during individual period, but so much of it is teaching focused and teaching by walkthrough as opposed to by application, which I'm sure they probably appreciate because it's not the easiest thing in the world to get in and out of your stance as a 300-plus pound defensive lineman. And, I think Rocker's trying to manage them as best he can while also trying to improve their conditioning and team drills.
Yeah, that group has a chance to be a strength of this team up front. Just with Jeff Sweat and Joseph Day alone, who all three have shown, like it was a reasonable question mark coming in, particularly about Tavondre Sweat, just because we didn't know if he was going to be out there. We were told he was, but we didn't know until we saw it. But that group's got a chance to, I think, to be a significant strength this year if the likes of Davidson and Coburn and McClendon can actually provide quality depth. Not if, but when certain guys have to miss plays or miss games.
DK McClendon and Marlon Davidson looked like they might be viable last year when they were forced into action. Jeff Simmons obviously playing in 12 games last year. Danico Autry, I think, missed some time as well, if I remember correctly. I'd have to go back and look at game logs. But rotation guys, they're almost always going to play. It's who was talking to us about the idea that you can't really look at depth guys as just depth guys. You also have to treat them as starters.
Oh, sure. I mean, the starter conversation gets overblown to begin with,
True.
right? Like
at a lot of positions.
Exactly. Like the starter is just who's out there for the first play.
Do you write down? Whose name do you write down on the starting formation on the first offensive play of the game?
So
Correct.
if a guy's a starter and he plays 12 snaps, is he really a starter, right? That stuff gets overblown. Like what positions could that get overblown within this team? Running back, right? Doesn't matter who's out there for the first play. They're both going to play between Pollard and Spears. I feel like at tight end, you could see it get interchangeable. Guys are going to have different roles, different functions within this offense. So, yes, depth guys a lot of times end up having the same impact as quote-unquote starters.
615-737-1045. You'll hear from Brian Callahan coming up next, and also we'll get into later in the show some big takeaways for big Tavondre Sweat. There have been many, and I know a lot of you guys are excited about that. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. 615-737-1045, the number. Brian Callahan was at the podium yesterday. And I know that this first part is cut off, Jackson, but he started out his press conference by saying, yeah, this felt like training camp for the first time yesterday. Now, they practiced Saturday and Sunday in full pads. If you're just now joining us, they are off today. They will have a closed session tomorrow. They will be out there on Wednesday and Thursday. We will be out there on Wednesday and Thursday. Sounds like fans will be out there Wednesday and Thursday as well. In fact, somebody just DM'd me on Instagram asking if I knew anything about fan parking for these. I don't. I wish I had more information for you about that. All I know is there's a shuttle from wherever it is that they're having fans park for these practices. I know that there is a shuttle that takes you to the facility. So if I can provide you more information than that, I will be happy to do so. Felt like training camp for the first time, though. What does that mean? Well, let's hear from Brian Callahan first, and then I'll tell you what I think he meant by that.
For the first time. You know, we kind of backed up fourth day in pads, back-to-back practices, and I think you felt the back and forth. You know, I thought the defense came out with a lot of good energy and tempo today. They kind of got us in that first red zone period offensively, and I was kind of curious to see how our guys would respond after being tired and you know, being on the losing end of a period. And I thought they came back and answered the next red zone period with a really nice performance. And then we had a chance to get some third down pressure work in, which is always my least favorite period, playing against Denard with all the pressures they have. And then we got a chance to work some backed up, a lot of teachable moments in the backed up spot first time we got down there on our -1 trying to come out. Really nice job defensively on the first and last series. So that was sort of the emphasis of practice, a little more red zone work, a little bit of third down pressure, and working on the backed up. As far as injuries go, really the guys that I said yesterday are all the same, and ultimately we had one or two guys leave practice. Don't know what those look like until after practice. So any questions on those guys, I don't really have an answer for you until sometime other than right in this moment.
Brian Callahan speaking to the media yesterday after 2 more days of padded practice, Saturday and Sunday. By the way, we're locked on to the Olympics. We've got beach volleyball right now going on between the USA and Canada. So we are keeping tabs on that. Fun. The Olympics have just been a lot of fun this year. I think the time zone works out really, really well. But let's stay focused with the Titans for the moment being. So you heard Brian Callahan describe the back and forth, right? There's been, at least yesterday, there was no one side of the ball that dominated. It has been defensive skewed, I would say probably through the first 3 padded practices, though you have seen the offense adjust, problem solved, find ways to mitigate the pressure. Saw them throwing some screens at the first team defense yesterday to get Big Sweat moving side to side, maybe wear him down, things like that. With the receivers and the running backs, you saw some reverses yesterday. Some were executed well, some were not, for what it's worth. Trying some different things. There's going to be a lot of motion in this offense to help them define it. And to his point about situational football, I think that's the first time that I've seen them doing stuff backed up against the end zone. And we'll expand more when we talk about T'Vondre Sweat specifically coming up next. But they are going to be able to generate a lot of interior pressure as long as those two stay healthy. We'll leave it at that for the time being. But better progress from the quarterbacks. And this is kind of the way that I talked about it in the 10 a.m. hour where, Lucas, I'm not trying to take too much from any one drill and even any one individual practice beyond saying, all right, this is what that unit did the day before. Can they build upon it? Can they improve upon it? Will they falter? Where is the consistency? All those different things that you're trying to track day to day without trying to have extreme opinions from one team drill to the next 7-on-7 to the next, individual or something like that.
So the offense kind of leveling out, it seems.
They leveled the playing field yesterday. They were far more evenly matched yesterday in padded practice than they have been in any of the 3 other days. That's how I would, and I would say that at any of the 3 levels, so much so that Josh Wiley and Mason Kinsey, two guys without, I think the question was asked of them about having lighter resumes or less accomplished resumes, but still talking a lot of trash out there.
I mean,
which I appreciate.
I don't know. That question kept coming up.
Well, it kept coming up. PK was clearly working on something to that effect. He kept asking the same question.
But you agree with that you don't think Mason Kinsey should be out there barking if he can't back it up on game day?
No, I don't know. Well, on game day is one thing because he would have to be active for a game day. And Mason Kinsey, to his credit, I called him a roster roach, and people took that as a bad thing, and I mean that as the highest compliment because you can't get rid of the dude. This is year 5 for Mason Kinsey.
Mason Kinsey's been here since 2020.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
How many other players on this team have been around since
Not
2020?
that many.
Like, as far as I'm concerned, this is Mason Kinsey's locker room. He
Hell
can talk
yeah.
as much as he wants on the practice field.
Well, so like he scored a touchdown yesterday, did a little salsa dance. like Mason Kinsey is not yet Victor Cruz, so I would understand some people being like, all right, bud, come on. But it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah,
they're supposed to be having fun. If Wiley and Kinsey and other guys, Matt Jackson, who's picking off dudes in training camp practice, maybe he doesn't start at safety for the Titans this year, but he can make plays in training camp, and I don't think there's anything wrong. There's no refs out there to throw flags on celebrations. It's not baseball where everybody's stuck up about everything and your cheeks are clenched every time anybody celebrates anything even remotely, though I think we're moving further and further away from that in baseball, mercifully. Yeah, I don't have an issue with that. It is just like those are the noticeable guys. And also Hopkins isn't out there. Ridley's not that loud. He talks with his play, clearly. And, when you see it with the offensive linemen, it's just pushing and shoving back and forth, and they grunt, growl, and put their hand in the dirt, go through the next play. Honestly, the loudest person on the offensive side of the football is Tyke Tolbert. I hear Tyke Tolbert. He has replaced Tony Dews. His voice doesn't quite carry the way that Tony's did. But Tyke Tolbert is the loudest person out there on the practice field, I think, at any given point.
I mean, Brian Callahan has, from the jump, talked about wanting players to be themselves, to be comfortable, to enjoy coming to work, enjoy their surroundings, all of those things. So it wouldn't make a ton of sense for him to then turn around and say, no, you're not allowed to talk trash in practice unless you have, 57 career catches minimum in the NFL. Guys can talk. Guys can do whatever they want on the practice field, wherever they're comfortable. I don't think that. I don't think you should have certain requirements of success in the league in order to be qualified to talk trash at practice. Like, everybody's out there competing.
No, I wasn't taking the opposite position. I just said it come up yesterday in the press conference, and Brian Callahan said as much, that he would like guys to just be themselves out there, and that general, I won't say looseness, because loose can mean, it can have a negative connotation, right? And I'm not saying that these practices are unorganized or anything like that, but there is a general looseness to the way that he allows players to carry themselves, right? Their personalities to show through. He mentioned the controlled aggression that they have been able to manage, and you'll hear that clip from Brian Callahan later on. But, you can be Jeff Simmons, for example, be yourself, and also not try and fight everybody the first day of practice the way that, Jeff clearly came out with an intent to establish the tone for practice, and it went too far on the first day of pads.
Yeah, but also, did you hear Calvin Ridley talking about that?
Oh, yeah. I was the one that asked him the question.
Yeah. He's like, we loved it.
Oh, yeah.
We love it.
He said some words about Jeff that I cannot say on FCC Safe Radio in a complimentary way, but I believe he, something like an effing beast or something like that, something to that effect. And yes, I would agree. That's why you love Jeff.
Yeah, we love that energy. The way he put it was like, we'll figure out the rest in the locker room. Like, if that stuff, carries over and there's beef on the practice field, we'll figure that stuff out. Don't worry about it. But we want that energy.
Giles says, you still talking about that? Yeah, because it's relevant. Here's why it's relevant. They have to learn as a new team how to play more football, how to manage the day-to-day of playing football every day. This is as intense a stretch as they're going to have. And they have to be able to play with controlled aggression, just as they'll have to be able to play with controlled aggression in the preseason game on Saturday and week 1 against Chicago. And that it started that way and has very much balanced itself out and allowed these guys to establish some kind of boundaries, first and foremost, while still bringing that intensity to their practice efforts and things like that. It's absolutely relevant from start to finish, just as week 1 is as relevant for most teams as week 16 or 17 are. You continue to grow. You track the through line of a team from start to finish, and this team obviously started in training camp. Coming up next, T'Vondre Sweat, rave reviews coming out of Titans practice. I'll give you my own coming up right after this.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. The Tennessee Titans have signed free agent safety Quandre Diggs. Adam Schefter reporting it is a one-year deal worth up to $5 million. The 31-year-old three-time Pro Bowler reunites with Jamal Adams, his former teammate in Seattle. As it is game week for the Tennessee Titans, the first preseason game of 2024 coming up Saturday at Nissan Stadium against the San Francisco 49ers. The next time media will be allowed at Titans practice will be coming up on Wednesday at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. The Tennessee Vols secondary took a big hit over the weekend. Defensive back Judon Thomas will miss the 2024 season with a knee injury, according to a report by VolQuest. The Vols did pick up a commitment from five-star quarterback Faison Brandon on Saturday. The North Carolina native is rated the number one quarterback in the 2026 class on 247 Sports. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hour number 3 is already upon us. Welcome in. Welcome back. Thanks for kicking it on this Monday. Jackson, Lucas, and me, we got you for one more hour. We'll turn things over to Blaine Bishop here in just a little bit. Lucas, for some reason, is all over the place trying to figure out, well, we got to get Pate in here. Josh Pate before week 1. Week 1 in college football, 3 weeks away, mind you. We've got to get Giardi on the show to talk New England Patriots and Joe Milton, which is really why he wants to talk to Mike Giardi. New England Patriots reporter for the Boston Sports Journal on Tuesday, August the 6th.
We need to tell him to give us Matthew Judon.
You want Giardi? I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to accomplish. You don't have to hurry up and get there just yet. Like, we can have a little bit of training camp before all of the football things drown us, essentially, for the next 6 months. Why are you in such a hurry?
This is such an odd time of year because football is looming. I mean, it's right there, but it's also 3 weeks away, or in the case of the NFL, about a month away.
I just don't know why you're peppering me about our Patriots reporter, buddy, to come on August the 6th. I don't understand.
I saw Giardi tweeting about a missed throw from Drake May, so
which means Milton, QB1,
got me thinking.
Get Giardi.
Colin Cowherd did double down on Friday.
He did.
Doubled down about Joe Milton over Drake May and took a shot at Will Levis.
I don't want that. I don't want it. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to entertain this more than us having you, because see what you've done. You've taken it too far. You, instead of letting me enjoy the moment of the idea of Patriots fans being completely confused by this backflipping.
Who is this man?
The rocket launcher of a human being out there dusting their first overall pick in practice on a daily basis. Instead of laughing and letting me enjoy that moment, you've got to take it to extreme. You've got to call Giardi. You got to play Rocky Top in my ear at any given moment. And then you've got to continue to feed me just anybody who'll say anything positive about Joe Milton, even if it's Colin Cowherd, just play it in my ear constantly.
Yes, that's me, the Joe Milton propaganda machine. That's it.
It's been for 2 weeks. It's been for 2 weeks. I'm exhausted.
I just find it hilarious.
It is funny.
The discourse coming out of New England has been so fascinatingly hilarious to me as they discover who this man is.
So Joe Milton will play in the preseason. The Titans, it's a game week. Happy game week for those of you who celebrate. No, not that game week. Get it out of here.
Now we got another 3 weeks before that one.
Not yet. Don't make me dislike Rocky Top. Don't drown me in so much Rocky Top this year that I resent it. Don't do it to me. I actually enjoy Rocky Top, even though Lucas told me it's not the official fight song, which was news to me.
Do you remember what the official fight song was?
Down the Field.
Attaboy.
Memory like a steel trap. You'll get nothing by me except everything all at once. So, Titans. Quandre Diggs, a Titan. Congratulations to you all. You have a new starting safety. Game week, Niners coming to town. We'll see what that looks like Saturday night at Nissan Stadium in preseason. Looking forward to seeing all of you guys out there. We do have logistical information on the pregame show. Apparently, Gate 3 is where the broadcast will originate from. Remember, that is 3 No, it's 4 hours prior to kickoff. If I remember correctly, I probably got to get my 3 hours prior to kickoff with the Lee Company countdown to kickoff, then Titans countdown an hour before kickoff, and the game, of course, itself. So we look forward to all of those things because it feels close to football. What's making his presence felt, or regularly making his presence felt at Titans practice, is T'Vondre Sweat. The man he's not quite unblockable, but he's damn near when he feels like getting there. And I have had zero reason to question his motivation. His conditioning continues to be a work in progress, as expected. I think Latham said yesterday, what is he, about 370 pounds? So that's as close to a weight as we've gotten on T'Vondre Sweat in quite some time, which is still more than 366 when he got drafted, but whatever. T'Vondre Sweat out there wrecking dudes. I saw him not quite pick up Lloyd Cushenberry. And Lloyd Cushenberry, not a small man, but put Cushenberry on skates so fast in those backed up against the end zone drills, and on one specific play, pushed him square into the quarterback in a play that would have resulted in a safety had contact on the quarterback been allowed. He is a menace. There is no disputing that. And it's exactly, in practice at least, the vision. You understood their vision when they drafted him, that you need a running mate for Jeff, that if T'Vondre Sweat can occupy more of the interior, then maybe you can do some more stuff creatively with Jeff, like, for example, put him out on the edge, let him rush from the edge, but maybe take an inside shade the way that he talked about, that Latham talked about, right?
Yeah,
did you notice that?
Yeah, he did. Almost like not expecting that for Jeff to go inside him the way he did.
Because, phrasing.
Oh, man. Keep it moving.
No, I'd like to sit here and wallow in that for a minute.
Keep it moving.
No. Would you let me keep it moving? Under no circumstances. You're the one bringing the show to a screeching halt.
Roberts in the FNFA chat just said, woof.
Should we make that a drop?
A lot of flesh. All right. So.
But with Sweat and Jeff, it has felt like for the last few days, you're starting to see the bones of what the Titans envisioned with an interior pass rush of Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat.
Yeah, go ahead and try to save yourself with some analysis there. I'm sure people will gloss right over it. You are correct. They are at least able to get more creative with Jeff when they have Sweat. The question remains, how consistently can Sweat remain out there? He's not missed a practice since the whole offseason program of where is Sweat? Why isn't he practicing? Why isn't he practicing in front of us? All these different things. And now to date, there has been no issue. Consistent has been the thing. He continues to work very closely with Tracy Rocker. You can see the dividends of him working with Jeff and also working against Cushenberry and Skoronski. And, depending on the day, Sadiq Charles has been out for a couple of days with a personal situation. Radens has been the right guard. So you see him getting the better of a lot of those matchups. And that, if you told me that T'Vondre Sweat was out there performing or was a first-round pick, I'd believe you, based on the way that he's performing in practice.
Like if you didn't know anything
about T'Vondre Sweat.
Yeah.
If you told me that player, because he's a mountain of a man and he moves so fast for being something or someone that size, if you told me that person was a first-round pick in the NFL, I would not dispute that at all, knowing nothing about T'Vondre Sweat. And it's kind of curious to see which of them will actually end up having the better rookie season. I think the degree of difficulty is greater on Latham because offensive line, especially in some of these situations where you're reactive as opposed to attacking, pass blocking is not the offensive line's favorite situation. They would run the football every play if you'd let them. But T'Vondre Sweat is an interior defensive lineman. Defense always going to be ahead of the curve that way. There's a lot more technical stuff. It's not like Sweat isn't learning technical skills and things like that, but there's a lot more intensive technical stuff going on with Latham right now, and the degree of difficulty would make me feel like Sweat is actually set up better for success in his first year than Latham might be, because we know offensive linemen struggle as rookies.
Would it be fair to say maybe Sweat with the higher ceiling on the type of impact he can have this year and Latham with the higher floor?
It's tough. It's a tough question to answer because if Latham goes anywhere remotely close to plan, then his ceiling immediately elevates the ceiling of every other player on the field.
I'm talking about for this year, for how they can impact this team this year. Like for Latham, it's about, can he hold up? For a team that has not had a left tackle that can just be okay since Taylor Lewan was at his best, or, before the injuries really came flying in. So just for the rookie year, can Latham just hold up? Can his floor be higher? And can T'Vondre Sweat, at times, be a game wrecker?
Are you made uncomfortable by the amount of sex jokes that the chat is making at your expense?
Nobody's making them. Nobody's making the jokes.
Oh, you can go ahead and
to go inside him the way he did.
Jackson, yeah,
it's the fastest Jackson Williams has ever moved in his lifetime. My goodness.
Well, Sweat and Latham may or may not be joining the show at some point this week. Perhaps we can put Lucas in an unceremonious position, no pun intended, based on how he was giddy at the idea of Jeff coming across the table and smacking the spit out of me. I think that we have some opportunities for additional funny content coming up this week.
Unbelievable.
If Latham and Sweat do, in fact, join the show, as we are expecting that they just might this week. That should be fun.
Very mature.
Coming up next, quarterbacks through 2 weeks. We'll see if Lucas has any sex jokes about them coming up next. Welcome back to the show, fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Let's talk some quarterbacks, shall we? T-Sweat making an impact at practice. That is one of the biggest takeaways. The other has been backup quarterback competition feels more real, even though Callahan said something yesterday that I found interesting about. He was asked a question, the idea of, have you ever considered playing, for example, the second-string quarterback against the first-team defense? And he said, yeah, there's some benefits to that. It's not like it's something that we've never done before, but right now it makes the most sense to rep one-on-ones, two-on-twos, threes-on-threes, etc. And then the idea of putting Malik up against the second or first-team defense came up. And Callahan was very complimentary of Malik Willis. In fact, I can pull up the transcript and read you the exact quote. We don't have that audio pulled. You'll hear from Brian Callahan on some other things here in just a second. But he's been very complimentary of Malik and pointed out, if I was to give Malik that opportunity, I would have to demote Mason Rudolph. And Mason Rudolph has done nothing worthy of demotion to date, which I thought was an interesting note. So we talked to Mason Rudolph yesterday about a variety of different things, but specifically about how quarterback-friendly Brian Callahan's offense is. This was the Titans' current backup quarterback.
In good days, I'm proud of the way that the team's working, even out here with some couple padded hot days back-to-back. Guys are doing well. I think everyone's just we're getting more used to just the new concepts that Brian's put in. That's each every day. Guys are just, the more reps you add, first time offense, I think we're all starting to feel more comfortable.
Is this an offense that is made for quarterbacks? It kind of feels that way.
It does. I mean, I with Coach Callie's experience with pulling things, from what he said from, Peyton in Denver and Matt Stafford in Detroit, and then, obviously Zach Taylor in Cincy. It's a great concoction of, concepts and quarterback-friendly concepts and plays that get the ball in your hands quickly, can get on the field, can do it all, but it all starts with protection, and the guys have been doing a great job up front.
Where have you seen the dividends of that quarterback experience that he talks about and how that's kind of played itself out in practice?
Yeah, I just think he's got a good even-keeled demeanor about himself. I've been around coaches on offense who, they're screamers, or they get too high sometimes or too low. I think we all feed off that just consistent energy from him, and he's just a good teacher in the meeting room with the offense installing. He's got a good presence out here, so I think everyone's sort of gelling in the right direction.
So that's Mason Rudolph, backup quarterback, speaking about the offense and the work that they're able to get done. So then from a receiver perspective, Mason Kinsey is somebody who's come up more and more. There's not an active competition for the starting slot job, right? That is Tyler Boyd's job. But there are a lot of guys who are trying to display as much versatility as humanly possible between Jaquan Jackson, Mason Kinsey, Kyle Phillips, Nick Westbrook-Akina, who also spoke yesterday. Traylon Burks getting expanded opportunity. We talked about Hopkins, right? That came out on Thursday, and then we were on the air Friday talking about Hopkins, I want to say. So obviously we've been through that. My days blur together when we work weekends like this. But Mason Kinsey, I thought, had good perspective on both of the backup quarterbacks, specific to Malik and Rudolph.
I think both of them are playing really well. I think, when we had the open practice, I was watching the film on the iPad, and I texted Malik. I was like, dude, you had a hell of a day. Keep working. And then, I've taken a lot of reps with Mason. I think that we've gotten kind of on the same page and been able to connect. I was telling them, we ran a concept yesterday, and he was like, hey, man, you're getting across the field too fast. I can't hit you. And then we ran the same concept today, and he hit me for a big gain. So, I think it's all about timing. It's all about reps. But both of them, man, they look great. It's been awesome. It's not my call to say who's going to be what, but I think they're both playing really good football, which helps everybody. And it's going to be exciting in the preseason to not only for them, but for the receivers as well. When the quarterback plays well, it's good for the receivers. When the receivers play well, it's good for the quarterback. So it all comes together.
Okay. So quarterbacks making progress. It still feels more of a competition than we might have expected it to be. But to Callahan's point, in order to get Malik additional work, you would have to demote Mason Rudolph, and Mason Rudolph has done nothing but run the offense pretty well. He's not the most talented player in the world, right? Otherwise, he would have been a starting quarterback prior to this, and he's been a starting quarterback in relief duty that way for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But it's about the trust that he has built with the coaching staff, and that being the most important thing. It doesn't mean that Malik still can't make the roster, right? We're not, preseason just means we're getting closer to roster cuts. Roster cuts are still several weeks away. But I feel as strongly now, if not more, as I did, I don't know, when was I talking about Malik? Probably feeling more likely than not that Malik would make the roster, I think before training camp.
Make the 53?
Make the initial. The initial.
So keep 3 quarterbacks.
I do. If they don't trust the waiver process to sneak him through to get him to the practice squad, because I think they'd like to keep him in some form or fashion, then they can, on the initial 53-man roster, keep him, get him through the waiver process, and then, if they need to make some roster adjustments, Juliet Chestnut him, right? Chestnut was on the 53-man roster last year. I think they kept like 4 or 5 running backs. We all looked around like, what? What does this mean? And then the very next week or a couple of days shortly thereafter, a transaction was made. Chestnut ended up on the practice squad, and nobody was worse for the wear. They just found a way to protect a player that they had interest in kind of prolonging that way. I think Malik is more likely to be on the initial 53 than he is to be cut, because I do think somebody pick him up on waivers. We'll find out what he looks like in the preseason, because now he has to see. Denard is throwing all kinds of stuff at all 3 quarterbacks. So maybe it's not the same level as facing Sweat and Jeff every day, the way that Levis is up against, or that Cushenberry is up against, and that kind of pressure. But Malik has improved noticeably. And if we're noticing that level of improvement, and I'm certain that there's things that the coaching staff is taking away saying, yeah, this guy's got something that we can work with here.
Jim Wyatt, who charts these things, has every pass attempt in 7-on-7s or team drills for all 3 quarterbacks. For Will Levis, Wyatt has him at 83 of 119, which is a 70% completion percentage. Mason Rudolph,
significantly better than his regular season completion percentage of 58.9.
Yeah. Rudolph, he has at 64 of 76, which is an 84% clip. And Willis, he has at 48 of 70, which is a 69% clip.
That sounds about right, based on the kind of passes that each quarterback is attempting. Now, they're running similar plays for all the quarterbacks and stuff like that, but does Mason Rudolph prefer the running back or the tight end in the flat or a check down or something like that to Levis pushing the ball down the field? Or is Malik pushing the ball down the field more often than he's searching for the checkdowns? We're seeing it. You know what I'm not seeing? Malik panicking and just tucking and run. That's what I'm not seeing at Titans training camp practice. He is one of those players where, there's degrees, right? It is more acceptable for Malik Willis to have some experimental stuff than it is for Will Levis right now. There's going to be more scrutiny. There's a higher level of importance and urgency on the starting quarterback to get this thing right. But as Malik Willis continues to grow and develop within the scope of this offense and with the quarterback coaching that he's now receiving, he can still have some of that experimentation stuff in practice that I don't think Levis you would really allow for as much, if that makes sense. Now, there's other opportunities that have arisen. DeAndre Hopkins is not practicing for the foreseeable future. Dealing with a knee strain, right now, they sound cautiously optimistic about week 1. I don't think that there's anything. I think it's probably too early to make any kind of determination about that. The general timeline was 4 to 6 weeks.
They don't have to rush him back.
They don't.
Which is not something you can necessarily say in the last couple of years.
But, and I wanted to make sure that I got to this today. So Traylon Burks is the person who most benefits from Hopkins not being out there. In the same way that Avery most benefits from Chido Awuzie not being out there at cornerback. Somebody's got to take the snaps. And Traylon is definitely in different physical shape than I've ever seen him, in a good way. But there is still some level of wait and see with me before I can completely embrace the idea of, all right, Traylon, let's go out there and let you have some cracks at this over somebody like Nick Westbrook-Akina that I know I can trust. Now, the coaching staff does not have the built-in predispositions that a lot of us do about this wide receiver core, right? In the same way that I think we talked about Blaine pointing out maybe Callahan doesn't know to pull Jeff Simmons out of practice if he's running too hot on a day to try and get things accomplished. Maybe they do definitely want to try the Treylon Burks thing before they go back to NWI. Makes sense. The thing about Treylon to me, and he had some catches that certainly wow you. He's definitely bigger, faster, stronger than your average wide receiver out there. But my thing is two parts about him. One, how well does he do with locating the football when it's in the air on some of these deep shots? Because he can get behind the secondary. But there is some degree of, does he have to slow down to adjust to it in real time? Does he track it adequately? Do you remember A.J. Brown talking about being a baseball player and how it helped him track a football, essentially, having played baseball before? And, I'm sure Treylon was a fine athlete at any number of sports that he played coming up. I don't know how specified his baseball experience was. But Treylon does seem to need to continue to work on locating the ball in the air and also maintaining his speed while he does it, because the adjustment and slowing down can lead to a pass looking like it was an overthrow, but not necessarily being an overthrow, or looking off target when it wasn't necessarily off target based on where the quarterback expected you to be if you were keeping your speed at the time the quarterback threw the ball. Second part of that, when he hits the ground, Lucas, it is so hard. He got up with a noticeable limp on Saturday after, I want to say it was later in team drill that he came down with the ball in the back of the end zone, and just every time he does it, whether he's got the ball or it's in incompletion, it just feels like such a hard crash when he lands that way. And you notice him getting up. It's maybe I have this preconceived notion about him because of Pittsburgh and how scary that situation was on Thursday Night Football when he had to be immobilized, tries to go for a deep ball, comes down crashing in the back of the end zone or close to the back of the end zone. And of course, misses some time with a concussion after that. The impact of him, and I don't know how you correct it. Is he supposed to run through it necessarily? How he keeps his feet? I'm not Tyke Tolbert as wide receiver coach, but I do notice that when he makes contact with the ground, it is considerably more violent than your average wide receiver, at least the wide receivers that we've seen out there. And I don't think that's inconsequential for somebody who's said basically we'll see about wearing the concussion cap, the Guardian cap in games, the way that they're allowed to do, even though there's a 20% league-wide 20% decrease in the occurrence of concussions when you wear the Guardian cap, and now they're, for the first time, allowed to wear them in games. And also everything else that he's dealt with, whether it's knee sprains, all kinds of other stuff throughout the court, turf toe. Treylon Burks has a couple of different things that he has to try and protect himself against. And I don't know how he balances trying to make a play and also protecting himself, because it seems like a really, really fine line that he's trying to toe.
He's also the biggest body in the wide receiver room
by far.
So it's a lot of weight crashing down onto the grass there. But
sure, but onto him too.
I see what you're saying for sure. I mean, and Chef Ran on the F&M Bank chat says you got to learn how to fall. I don't know if Treylon Burks doesn't know how to fall when he's going to the ground. He's a very good athlete.
Yeah, I'm not. But I once he got up with that limp, I had to ask myself how often is he on the ground? One, because he does feel like he's on the ground more. I don't want to say more often than not, but a lot in these practices, in these drills, where they're just trying to keep everybody on their feet and available.
I mean, there's a lot of deep balls. Like
sure.
I feel like every time
he's the deep ball guy.
Yeah, every time I look up, Burks is screaming down the sideline or looking for a ball in the air, and he's got blanket coverage and he's trying to moss somebody for it. And typically bodies are going to go crashing down when that happens. I don't know. I don't know if that's anything worth diving into, but he's going to play a lot in the preseason, right? Stands to reason Treylon Burks will be out there a pretty healthy amount, but Brian Callahan was extremely complimentary of him over the weekend.
Let's hear from Brian Callahan on Sunday. This was the Titans head coach at the podium.
What's important for Trey, and I expressed this to him the other day, is that nothing changes for him. Whatever approach he's taken so far has been fantastic. He's done everything we've asked. He's in great shape. He looks big and strong. He's made plays in practice, and for him, I just said there's no more pressure on you to do anything other than just do what you've been doing. And I think that's he's in a good place with that perspective, and I thought he's had a really good start to camp. I'm excited to see him play some in the preseason and see what he does in game action, but very pleased with what he's done so far.
So that's Brian Callahan speaking about it. And I understand your point about how relevant that is. But if he's relevant because his opportunities are going to be more now, then he has to find ways to stay available. And the whole thing with Treylon Burks is, how do you stay available? And if we're noticing different things that may be real or may be imagined, like maybe the whole thing with Burks is in my head and I'm just, because I noticed him crashing to the ground a couple of times, now I've got in my head that Treylon Burks always hits the ground that way. That's probably not true. But I do think it's something to keep an eye on in the way that he manages himself, because it is more important that he be available this year than it is that he catches 10 touchdowns. That he be available is the most important thing for Treylon Burks' viability, future viability with the Tennessee Titans as a franchise beyond this year.
Yeah, it's the most baseline thing he has to prove, right? Can you be out there then we'll talk about production and consistency and all of those things.
So anything that would even remotely look like it could inhibit that, I'm going to be hyper-focused on, maybe too much so, because that's in my head. He has to be out there. How can he keep himself out there more? How can he prevent against these things that he's had in the past? There's not the site of Vrabalism again, but there's a 100% chance of injury in football. It's something we know, right? You're going to get hurt at different points. Hurt versus injured. There are things that you can play through. And to his credit, I think he did try and play through the knee strain stuff after the initial training camp thing against the Vikings. And I can't remember if it was an LCL or MCL at the time. I need to go back and look at my notes. But he is one that it is more about the availability on the day-to-day than it is about the production. And I think that's really about as low a bar as you can set for any player on this roster, and it is so critically important.
He seems aware of that, though.
Oh, sure.
Like, that's the big, and this...
Unfortunately for him, it's we consistently make him aware about it with our questions.
Well, we were having similar conversations about Christian Fulton. Like, Fulton was very aware at what was holding him back. And the work that he put in last offseason was all about the soft tissue stuff. And, Fulton was sparingly hurt last season. But it feels like we're having similar discussions in terms of every question he's been answering has been about the shape that he's in and how he's tried to carry himself into camp and how he feels better than he ever has. How that plays out in the preseason and into the regular season remains to be seen, with DeAndre Hopkins potentially missing some time.
Certainly, Treylon is going to get the opportunity to play in the preseason and find ways to just stay available. Let's start there. Last call for phone calls if you got them. 615-737-1045 is the number. Lucas will get you a medal update as the Olympics continue on in front of us from Paris. And we'll wrap up the show with some poll updates coming up next. I know you guys have seen the Ford Broncos rolling around the streets as of late. They're all so cool, whether you've got soft tops, hard tops, Big Bend, Heritage style with the white tops, the Black Diamond Broncos, the Raptor, or even the smaller Bronco Sports like Burt drives. There are so many options, color combinations, so many different packages and trim levels. That's why the Two Rivers Ford team invites you to get to know the Ford Bronco. It's an open invite. You don't need to be in the market for a vehicle to test drive one of Two Rivers Ford Broncos. They have a team of Bronco experts specifically on hand to introduce you to the Ford Bronco, answer your questions, let you test drive the vehicle, show you the on-road and off-road capabilities, the technology, and all the accessories that any number of the models come with. They're there to educate you, to answer your questions, and to introduce you to a really cool vehicle that you might not know a lot about. That's one of the reasons people love doing business with Two Rivers Ford and why they're the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Go see my friends at Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, just 7 miles east of BNA, and get to know the Ford Bronco, because Two Rivers Ford is your Ford Bronco headquarters. Last call for phone calls. If you got them, 615-737-1045. A lot of moving parts around here with all of this. The Olympics continue to go on. We've got Spain and Morocco. Are you hate watching Morocco? Because they ousted or they just dismantled the American team in the Olympics. What was that, last Thursday?
It was. But hey, BJ Callahan meeting with media today. Nashville SC Media said Zimmerman could be available for selection tomorrow when Nashville goes up to New England in Leagues Cup group stage play. So it did get Walker back to Music City a little bit sooner. But no, Morocco, a team filled with quality. Spain already won the Euros this summer. They've had enough good things. Let Morocco get to the Olympic gold final.
So as the Olympics continue on while we're on the air, love having live sports on while we're on the air. Let's get a medal update as we keep track of these things. Volleyball against the Canadians just concluded earlier today. I know that we've had a bunch of gymnastics over the weekend.
Yeah, gymnastics, I believe, has concluded as of this morning. So in a really cool moment, Rebecca Andrade, who has an incredible story, the Brazilian gymnast who has been doing every event along with Simone Biles and the U.S. gymnasts, born in a favela in São Paulo, walked 2 hours each way to her gym for practice.
Now, you just used a word that I'm sure many people don't know what that is. A favela is a slum?
Yeah, the favelas are slums in cities like São Paulo and Rio that you see houses like stacked on top of each other.
Sure.
And she has overcome 3 ACL tears. Rebecca Andrade. So that's crazy to think about when you look at what these gymnasts are doing. Anyway, her floor routine got her gold. Simone Biles and Jordan Childs also medaled, and a really cool picture of them bowing down to Andrade, who finally got her gold medal. And I believe it is the first podium of 3 black medalists in a women's gymnastics event.
Awesome.
So pretty cool. But Simone Biles, obviously doing her thing. She is the GOAT. She has continued to be throughout the course of the Olympics. There was some history made against the U.S. yesterday when...
I don't want to hear it. USA.
The American
didn't happen.
Reign of 64 years of nothing but gold medals in the men's 4x100 meters medley in swimming ended as China got gold in that event. Yesterday, the U.S. got silver, although the women came in and did dominate the event right after, and they got gold in the women's version of that event. But for the medal count, we are pulling away the U.S. with 75 total medals. China is second with 52. We are 2 gold medals behind China in the gold medal count. They have 21. The U.S. has 19. So if America can best China the rest of this week and gather some more gold medals to make up that 2 gold medal gap, then America will sweep everything in the medal count at the Olympics.
I wanted to quickly congratulate Gretchen Walsh, who won 2 Olympic gold medals over the weekend. She's a Nashville native. She graduated from Harpeth Hall. She was part of the United States winning team in the mixed 4x100 meter medley relay on Saturday. She took gold on Sunday with the women's 4x100 meter medley relay team. So congratulations to Gretchen Walsh.
Also, Scotty Scheffler.
I was just going to bring up Scotty Scheffler after this, who was as calm in a big spot as I've ever seen any kind of professional athlete handle themselves, because he went through a bunch of different drama basically over the final 2 hours of his last round, and then ultimately went on to win the gold after he started 4 shots behind in the final round, 6 shots behind early on the back 9. He then birdied 5 of 6 holes down the stretch. He matched the course record with a 9 under 62 for a 1-shot victory over Tommy Fleetwood, I believe. So Scotty Scheffler's run of dominance continues.
We will get a lot more track and field for the rest of the week. Noah Lyles started off pretty hot with a gold in the men's 100-meter final. And then lastly, another really cool story, because it's pointed out in the F&M Bank chat by Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. And I don't know if that's a law firm. But Kristen Faulkner, the cyclist who won gold, pulled away late yesterday in the streets of Paris. She grew up in Alaska. She was a rower at Harvard, then moved to New York City, started working for like a capital firm, took a beginner's cycling class in Central Park, This is like a few years ago. And starts just cycling in the mornings before work as a workout. She starts to compete in local tournaments, and then she quit her job at a venture capital firm in New York to move to California, pursue cycling full-time. She was added to the U.S. road cycling roster a month ago and pulled away, dominated yesterday to win gold in Paris after definitely less than a decade of ever cycling. Just picked up a bike once and said, I'm going to do this now, and she's a world champion.
That's
Always
sick.
cool. Always cool to see those type of stories.
Somebody saying that's why the stock markets crashed this morning. Did you see that?
I did.
I'm going to call my financial advisor after this. Anyway, polls, please.
The polls are presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. What else do the Titans need to address before the start of the season? Kat Nash on Twitter says edge/outside linebacker. Willie says one rotational edge piece, whether Arden Key is suspended or not.
Yeah, no, I mean, they needed edge help before Arden Key got suspended. And Arden Key, a reminder, is still not technically suspended. I don't know if we got to this during the course of the show, and if we did and I've forgotten, I apologize here. But he was asked, he was available yesterday after practice. He did not have a comment on the pending suspension because the league has not made his pending suspension official yet. He preferred to answer questions about football because he's still very much running with the first team, and they've not given Rashad Weaver Arden Key's reps, at least yet.
Yeah, and Danico Autry's suspension also has not been made official, but he has acknowledged it and put out a statement and all of those things.
Correct.
What is your opinion of T'Vondre Sweat? Through almost 2 weeks of training camp, Taylor says he was sold to us as a draft reach who was overweight and lazy by some people in the media. I'm thinking those were uninformed lies, he says. The dude has showed up and showed out. He's going to be a monster for us in the middle.
Yeah, the lazy part, I don't know that anybody hit him with lazy, right? They just said, was he as focused as he should have been leading up to his final year of college?
Yeah, and the weight thing also is people make that connection
you
in their
could
head.
correlate because that overweight is not a lie. He's, again, the first player in the history of the Senior Bowl to not weigh in because of how much he did weigh at the time. And Latham is still talking about him around 470, or 370, which is more than he needs to be. His work ethic has been excellent to date. They have had no complaints about him. He has been everything that they have expected him to be. Again, the conditioning continues to be a work in progress as expected. But I don't think anybody was saying that T'Vondre Sweat was lazy. I just think that there were plenty of red flag things around T'Vondre Sweat that made the opportunity cost that they passed on worth questioning. He still has to play games. He still has to go through a season. We'll find out how much of what he's doing on the practice field, and he is doing a lot on the practice field. We'll see how much he can carry over and continue to have that impact into games.
Who has a higher upside this season, T'Vondre Sweat or J.C. Latham? 55% are going with T'Vondre Sweat. 45% Latham.
A higher upside is the way we phrase the question?
A higher upside this season.
This season, I would probably agree with Sweat. Degree of difficulty, defensive tackle versus transitioning rookie offensive tackle. Harder on the rookie offensive tackle. Rookie offensive tackle is very, very talented in J.C. Latham, but it will be harder for him to hold the line, essentially, no pun intended, than it will be for Sweat to impact a game. He can wreck a game without being completely technically sound. Although it was a good compliment from Latham about Sweat yesterday, saying he's not just one of these sloppy bigs that wants to bull rush you every time. He's got great side-to-side speed. He's got good hand-fighting techniques, good pass rush moves that he can implement. He's going to be able to create pressure on the interior of the pocket the way that they desire beyond, just stuffing the run and being a damn near 400-pound roadblock.
I could see it being with Latham this season, just more consistency, right? Just more even keeled throughout the course. He's going to have some rookie moments, but he's going to hold his own. And then with Sweat, some moments where it's like, whoa, when he can just absolutely blow up a play and blow up a drive. But maybe the consistency wavers a little bit depending on how in good of shape he is. I'm not sure. Who starts next to Amani Hooker in the defensive backfield? 92% are going with Quandre Diggs over Elijah Molden.
So I saw Mike Herndon phrase this in an interesting way. Let me see if I can find the tweet quickly before we wrap up the show. But he was pointing out that it may not be kind of what, here's what Mike writes. The question of where Diggs slots into the Titans safety room is a Diggs-Hooker conversation, not a Diggs-Molden conversation. To me, Diggs is the best safety on the roster today. Hooker is the most talented, most tenured, and should start, but Diggs has like 3 seasons better than Hooker's best year. Diggs and Hooker should clearly start, but I think Molden and Adams will both play a bunch as Denard Wilson leans more and more into 3 safety sets on defense. So we'll see if that comes to fruition.
Those are the polls.
Excellent. That's the show. Blaine Bishop got you coming up next. Prime time tonight. See you then. So many people trust Two Rivers Ford. Football players, working moms, business owners. Why? Because Two Rivers Ford has been doing business with integrity for decades.